So, I wanted to make a video specifically talking about an issue that I've been seeing more within fandom lately, and that's the fact of like the whole LARPer thing, basically calling people posers, though that's not what LARPer means, and also this whole idea of there being a wrong side in fandom, which I don't believe there is. Because a lot of people be like, the reason this fandom gets a bad rep is because of the shippers, or the reason this fandom gets a bad rep because of this group of people. And I think a lot of people now, because they're getting more interested in stuff like anime and K-pop, etc., in general, Marvel, stuff like that, they're getting more interested and more invested and wanting to interact with certain media, and they don't understand the core tenets of like being a part of a fandom, or like what a fandom is to an extent. And obviously there is like a general definition, but like for most people, how a fandom is structured is the main media analysis, and that's its subsects, and then art, which includes like fan art, edits, official art, etc., music, all that kind of stuff. But basically, like when I say like media analysis, that's where you get the shippers, that's where you get power scalers, that's where you get fanfic, that's where you get all that kind of stuff, and just like general media analysis. But because there is a certain, I don't think a lot of people know, because I personally, when I interact more with media, I end up falling more down like the shipping rabbit hole. Not every show, not every fandom I join, but some of it, like when it comes to certain animes, I do fall down that, because that may be the more like, there are certain times where an anime, a certain subsect will have more control, like more control over like what gets officiated, or demand of certain stuff, like shippers and thirsters and all that will probably end up getting more merch, um set to their likability, compared to like a power scaler, like the power scalers of certain fandoms, you know what I mean? And sometimes there'll be people who are more focused on the action and stuff like that. They'll probably get more scenes and stuff like that in an anime, rather than like certain types of fan service, because that is a fan service, but like certain types of fan service that is meant to go to a different subsect, you know what I mean? So, but I think a lot of people don't realize is that like power scalers, they do have a certain type of media analysis. They have to analyze the power structure, they have to analyze how certain characters' powers work, how it works in the context of that show, and how like they're different and their weaknesses and all that. That is media analysis. And same with shipping. Like obviously there are people who ship characters for fun, and like there's crack ships, but a lot of it does require certain media analysis, because those characters, like, you have to understand why their dynamic is interesting, why you get invested in it, how like their dynamic is displayed in the story, and how it holds focus, and how it builds the story. And that's how you get platonic ships, and that's how you get romantic ships, and that's how you get people who ship weird stuff all the time, and that's how you get fan fiction where people will explore a ship that they don't even like, or that they know is controversial, but they'll make fanfic about it because it's interesting, or the dynamic is interesting, or they want it in a different context, etc. And there will be some people who will obviously ship like controversial stuff, and there will be people who just ship normal characters and like their dynamic, usually best friends to lovers thing, and they'll do that romantically. Or people will be like, I want to know what this would be like in a different platonic setting, more nuanced, all that kind of stuff. That's what fanfic really is. And fanfic could be dark, it could be happy, it could be light, it could have so many different themes. But these are the core things of fandom, and they require media analysis. A lot of people, obviously there's more casual people who are kind of into it, kind of don't really understand the terminology or the history or why that stuff exists or how people actually build on those things and actually provide evidence, because people will make character analysis and dynamic analysis and come up with evidence from like the main media for their ships, for power scaling, all that kind of stuff. They will use visual interpretation, like in manga they will use how certain characters, like color dynamics, they'll be like, oh, this villain and this main character has this certain color dynamic and they're complementary colors and they have a lot of these similar traits, and that's why they have this certain dynamic, but also they're very much opposites, and this character wants to use this other character and manipulate them and all that. And they will use all this symbolism and then they'll incorporate that in fan edits, fan art, etc. Like they will be very specific, and a lot of it's really cool. And all of this is important to fandom. It's how a fandom works. It's how these shows, this media gets popular. And this also applies to like other fandoms, but I'm mainly talking about like anime and that, and like visual media. A lot of that, like, it's not just what's said in the canon, it's subtext, it's intention, it's implication. People will take all this kind of stuff, they'll analyze it, and they'll create their own stuff and interpret things, and obviously people will get into arguments and have their own opinions, and people will disagree. There's disagreements in shipping and power scaling all the time. People disagree, they have different opinions. But the thing is, I don't think there's anything wrong. Obviously there will be some people who will just say something objectively incorrect and people will correct them, and there will be people who, like, their interpretation is fine, but they don't bring up any evidence to back up their claim. They just kind of say it, and there's also fine. You don't always have to defend yourself, but I do think if you're gonna have a debate, like, oh well, this straight ship makes more sense with this character than this like gay ship with this character and all of that because of this and this, and he treats her this and this, well, oh well, he treats his guy best friend this and this, and that's entirely different than like his female love interest, and that's why I think they have a more romantic bond and he's more caring and has a higher value in him than like her. Whatever, people will do that all the time. I've seen it. I've been in shipping circles for a long time, and that's the thing, and there will be people who aren't interested in shipping. It's completely fine. They don't want to interact with shippers. That's completely fine. They don't like a certain ship in a fandom that's really popular. That's completely fine. My issue is them completely disregarding anything someone says. Like, there are people who study this. There are people who have this interpretation, and you simply disliking it doesn't mean anything. Like, you can dislike it, but that doesn't mean they're wrong. You know what I mean? And even then, it's like, an author can write something and it objectively be bad and something be better within the story. That happens all the time. Like, it does, okay? People will recognize that. I'm just saying in general, but I'm not even gonna try and focus on shipping, but I have to kind of clarify that because those are the circles I've been in. But I keep seeing this thing where I'll see shipping content because that's what I see, and then I'll go through the comments and it's just people completely disregarding or being like, oh my god, why is this on my feed? Oh my god, why are you trying to make everything like they're just friends, they aren't this and all that? Or why are you trying to make it more than what it is? Or, you know, or a larper or a poser or media illiterate. Now the thing is, anyone in any subsect can be media literate if they are just badly interpreting or misinterpreting what is being directly stated or implied in a story. Like, they can, like, if a character died, it's said that they died, it's implied that they died, people are grieving throughout the story, excuse me, people are grieving, and then someone comes like, well, they didn't actually die. You better have some pretty good evidence for why they didn't actually die, okay? Because there's plenty of stories where it does turn out like that character is alive, but you better have evidence for that. Because if we get up to like the second to last chapter and they ain't show up, and if they didn't show up, then I'm gonna question how you came to that conclusion, and that is what we should be doing. But but authors, they leave up a lot of vagueness or like ambiguity in stories about certain characters, about what they stand for, about exactly what they do, their intentions, like their reasonings, all that kind of stuff. And they'll purposely do that because they may not always know what they fully want to do with the character or a dynamic and all that. And we also have to take in consideration that some stuff may get cut out because of editors. Some stuff gets cut out because it may not be marketable, or may all that kind of stuff. So then they get stuck where it's like, well, or even then, artist block. So many authors will write a character and they have all this intention, and then they'll forget it, or they don't know what to do because they put this character in this situation, they don't know how to get them out of it. And they're like, that's why like with shippers, there will be a lot of people, they will see two characters, they interact so well together, their entire, like they are like literally making declarations like, I will stay by your side to the end of the world. I will literally, like, if you killed half the world's population, I wouldn't care because I'm gonna stay by your side. We're gonna be together and we're gonna fight and all that. And someone will literally declare that to their best friend, and then an author for some reason is gonna put that main character with another character that they've met like 3 times or interacted with 3 times, but because they have a crush on that person, they're just gonna get married. And it's like, I get like, okay, well, you're not gonna have these two characters get married, that's fine. But a lot of people, they'll be like, okay, he had like 5 interactions with her, he only had stated 1 time having a crush on her, he barely does anything nice to her, barely is there, they have no intense emotional moments, maybe they blush at each other a few times, they rarely have an actual conversation, he's not making a declaration to stay and fight by her side and willingly be there if she were to kill half the population. He hasn't been there. He's not grieving over her going into a coma. He's grieving over his friend going into a coma, rightfully, but he's not gonna grieve if she goes into a coma or if she has a broken leg. He's not doing all that, but he's gonna marry her? He's gonna be married to her by the end of the series? People obviously get upset with that. And it's not like, well, y'all are just mad because your gay ship didn't get canon. It's just because that makes no sense. Even if the gay ship didn't get canon, at least put him with a character, or at least make his love interest actually a love interest. Do not push her off to the side and then suddenly make it that they're married and then expect everyone to be okay with that, because even people who ship them probably weren't okay with that either, because you didn't put any actual depth to them. And that's the thing, people get into arguments like that all the time, and I'm sure it's different for different reasons with like a power structure or how a certain fight goes in power scaling. I'm sure people who are more into the action and stuff like that, especially in like shonen, that focus more on power and fights and all that, I'm sure they're probably like, it makes no sense for this fight to turn out this way. It makes no sense for this weakness to suddenly turn out when this has not shown and been prevalent throughout the series. All that happens. A lot of times authors, they do stuff that makes no sense, and people will not agree with it no matter the side of the fandom they are on. And just because someone has a different interpretation than you, or you may be okay with how the show ends or how something happens doesn't mean other people are gonna be okay, and people aren't wrong for that, especially when a series ends a certain way. If people are wrong or unsatisfied with a certain aspect of the story, and you're like, well, do you really think that was gonna be canon? Like you could be more respectful and be like, I like realistically we aren't in this minds of these authors, and their intentions change all the time, and different stuff occurs, so they might rush, they might be pressured to change stuff, they might have like everything, like they just might change their mind one day. And it's like it could have totally been going this route, it could have totally been going where it was this character and this character, they were gonna have a fight, but that never happens. And even though everyone wanted that, or these characters don't get together even though everyone wanted that. And it's totally understandable. But anyways, my point is that people's interpretations are not objectively wrong unless it is like an objective fact. Okay? Like it is like you can subjectively disagree. Like I disagree with your ship, or I disagree with how you interpreted this fight, or I disagree with what you think this character's intentions are because of this, and you back up your claim. That isn't the issue. The issue is, in my opinion, people going into other people's spaces and purposely making it uncomfortable. Like, I shouldn't be going into a shipping space and seeing people who don't like ships or don't like shippers coming in and making opinions and making claims about shippers and shipping and the culture and being offensive, saying offensive stuff, purposely trying to start an argument, and then they're just doing that to rage bait you. I don't like that. And the same thing, if I went into power scaling community, I don't know anything about power scaling. I don't know any of the terminology. I don't know any of the culture, any of the history, none of that. And I were to just go in and start flaming them and start saying you're a LARPer, media illiterate, all that kind of stuff. If I were to say that and I'm not understanding anything they're saying, or I'm not really focused on that aspect of the story, then I'm making it an uncomfortable space. I would be making that an uncomfortable space. And people are doing that in shipping circles. They're making it uncomfortable by stating opinions when they don't like shipping. And that's fine. You can be a casual fan and not want to interact with any part of the fandom. You can be someone who's not into shipping and not want to interact with shipping. You could be someone who's not into power scaling and not want to interact with power scaling, and that's completely fine. The issue is, first of all, it's impractical because you're interacting with content you already know you dislike and people that you already dislike, and then you're getting mad because you're gonna see more of that content on your feed. You're gonna see more of it, you're gonna hear more of it, you're gonna hear more discussions, and then you're gonna get mad even though you're commenting rage bait. And then also, it's like you're purposely being rude and then being like mad that people get defensive. And it's like, I have to say, people, like, there are shippers who get really defensive of their ships. I mean, I'm not gonna deny that. There are some people who take it too far. I'm not gonna deny that. I've seen it against other shippers. People will literally harass each other. They ship the same ship, but they will like harass each other over a difference in opinion or a headcanon, stuff like that. So I'm not saying, like, there are crazy fans, any subsect of a fandom. But my issue is you purposely starting an argument and then getting mad when people get defensive of trying to make a space that they made specifically for people like them to be safe, and then you are purposely making it an unsafe space. There is no reason people who are in a shipping community should be seeing hate comments from people who don't like shipping. There really isn't. It should only be people who are there that may disagree with them but are in the culture, or people who agree with them and are enjoying their content. That is it. I shouldn't be seeing your hate comments. Obviously there will always be hate comments, but I shouldn't be seeing it because it's impractical on your end and it's dangerous on the other end and the receiving end. And it's the same thing in any other subsect, okay? Like, seeing people get hate. Now, obviously, if someone's saying objectively harmful stuff, but it's like simply just saying, like, saying someone is a poser for having an opinion or being a part of a certain subsect of fandom that you just personally disliked does not mean they are that. Someone is not a poser objectively simply because they like shipping. Someone is not a poser because they like power scaling. Someone is not a poser because they like a different ship than you. Someone is not a poser because they interpret something different than you, okay? Like, someone is not a LARPer. No one is that, okay? The only thing that is harmful is people who purposely try and start arguments for no reason, who purposely try and make the environment harmful for no reason. Because the thing is, like, back in 2021, when people in, like, the shipping community, obviously there were fights and arguments. Most people could say, I ship this ship platonically, but I can see why you see it romantically, or I see it romantically, but I can see how you see it platonically. People could say that, they can move on, they could disagree, and they're just like, I respect your opinion though, I respect your interpretation, I respect your headcanon. Or it's like, I don't really respect it, and I'm not going to interact with you because of it, because I don't want to see that. Same thing. The same thing. I should be in a fandom. Slander content of a character is completely fine. I don't mind it. I like slandering some characters too, but when I don't want to see slander content in my favorite characters, I'll slander people. Like, that's the thing. I think you can slander any character you want, but I do think that part of slandering is a lack of understanding. Like, you cannot slander a character and not understand their character. You know what I mean? I definitely think people will purposely interpret or misinterpret a character's intentions and all that simply so they can slander them. But I think you have to understand their character to an extent to properly slander them. But I also think, like, if I don't want to see slander content of my favorite character, I don't have to. And I block those creators and I don't interact with their content because it pisses me off. And that's the thing. If something pisses you off, you don't have to interact with it. If you don't like shippers, if you don't like seeing ships, especially if you don't like seeing gay ships, you don't have to interact with that content. You leaving a hate comment is you interacting with that content even though you don't think you are, okay? And I also think that you can critique a part of a fandom that you aren't fully in, okay? Like, if you are a non-shipper and you want to critique the shipping side of the fandom, there is nothing wrong with that. Now, my main thing is, if you are critiquing a specific ship, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're critiquing a specific fight, there's nothing wrong with that. And you bring up evidence and you back your claim, that's completely fine. My issue is that, like, in order for you to properly critique shipping in general, you have to understand the culture. You have to understand the terminology. You have to understand its origins to an extent. You have to understand how shippers interpret character dynamics, because the main thing is, for you to have a successful ship, you have to understand the character dynamics in order for it to, bloom into something and to make fan fiction and all that. So and there will be people who will get stuff wrong or misinterpret. That's bound to happen. But if you are trying to critique shipping culture in general, you have to understand what shipping culture is. And as a non-shipper, you have to listen and you have to learn so you can properly critique it. You can't just be like, well, this and this and this, and then not have any understanding of the culture. Like, same thing. I cannot critique power scaling in a proper manner when I know nothing about the cultural power scaling, how they interpret the media, and who usually is involved in that space. Same thing. People forget. I see mostly men that are involved in, like, the power scaling community. many people are involved, but I mostly see men as creators, straight men specifically. And in shipping fandom, most of it, some of it is straight women, I will totally agree with that, but a lot of it is queer and trans fans as well that make content. And and you have to take in consideration why, like, for example, if a show, even a show in an anime, if they want to make merch, what are they most likely going to have in the merch? Gooner content, or, you know, fan service content, and shipping, which is also fan service. They're probably gonna have their two ships, like the two most popular ships, those characters standing together, and it comes out in like fan art, official art, like that. Or a character that they know is really popular amongst the men or the women, they may have them do like a maid butler cosplay or outfit for, and that be the official art, stuff like that. And the thing is, if you know, women are like majority consumers. Women are mostly the people that will go out and buy stuff. So if you want your merch to sell, if you want certain figurines, if you want certain traction, you're gonna probably get more success out of people like the shippers, like the people who are more into like the fan service of like an individual character. You're probably gonna get more money out of that versus, but you'll probably get more people staying and watching a show because of stuff like the fights or the romance, stuff like that. Okay, it's stuff like that. You will get people more to stay because of the plot, and probably stuff like the fights if we're talking shonen. And so, but the thing is, basically, it's like there is a big thing that, like, in general, we are all important to the success of our media that we like. We all like the same media. We're interpreting it differently. We're talking about it differently. We're going to argue. We're going to discuss. We're going to debate. And I think if we want to truly critique each other, we have to understand each other's cultures and the context and who's behind these cultures and who dominates them, and why some animes, they will have a more female dominated audience, and that female dominated audience will probably be a shipping dominated audience, and then you're probably gonna only hear stuff about the ships from that show. Meanwhile, a male dominated audience that is mostly probably power scalers is probably going to be a part of a certain show, and that will be like the main fandom, that will be like the dominating audience of the fandom, and like the shipping will be more minimized or equal, stuff like that. The thing is, we are all equal in the success of our favorite media, and we all contribute to it in different ways. But I think there are some of us who purposely try and make it unsafe spaces, and purposely try and start arguments, and purposely try and rage bait and make poser accusations, simply because they don't like what's being said. And I don't think that's fair, and I don't think those people have any respect towards fandom in general and to the media that they're watching, because the whole point is people can interpret things differently. Now, people can say something objectively wrong, I'm not going to deny that, but at the end of the day, interpretation is going to be different because of translation, because of the fandom, part of the fandom you're in, your cultural background, your perspectives, your ideas, like who you are as a person outside of fandom, and then how that identity incorporates inside of fandom and the specific subsect of fandom you're in. That all correlates into your interpretation. And I think a lot of people recognize that, like, if you're a guy who maybe like you aren't against gay people, but you're just like not with that gay shit. For example, if you're you're more against shipping and you want to see more of the fights and stuff like that, and then you see shipping content, you're gonna think that interpretation makes no sense because that's not what you're focused on. That's not your perspective. That isn't what has been marketed towards you, for example. And like, you have your opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that. The thing is, you have to admit when there is something wrong, when you are being rude, when you are being mean, when you are just trying to start a fight. Same thing with the girlies. You got, like, in general, people need to recognize there's nothing wrong with your, well, there, you can be wrong about something. That doesn't make your opinion necessarily entirely invalid. I'm gonna say that there can be something wrong with what you are processing. You can have a harmful thought or harmful perspective that you are adding to your interpretation of the media and how you execute it, and you can display that by being mean, by being rude, by making unsafe spaces. And you have to recognize when people call you out, they aren't doing it because they're necessarily being defensive of their subsect of fandom, but because you're being mean, because you're saying that from ideals of harm that you uphold. And I think if you don't want to see shipping, that's fine. But I think going into a space where people, that is where they feel most comfortable, that's how they interpret media, that's how they interact with their favorite characters, that's how they do all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's fair, and I think it's harmful for you to go and display something that it may seem like a fine opinion to you, but you don't understand how you're being harmful about it. You know what I mean? Because how you come off about something does matter. And I think at the end of the day, people need to realize you could be the good person within your subsect of fandom. Well, I'm not a crazy person in this part. I don't do all this. I don't do all that. The thing is, if people don't like your subsect of fandom, they do not care about who you are in it. They don't care if you're the weird one or you're the normal one. If they don't like your subsect of fandom, they don't like it. They don't like people like you. They don't like it. Okay? And I think we need to really bring back nuanced conversations, and I think people, it's it I do think some people get a little sensitive, but I think people have to understand where the sensitivity comes to issue is that there's nothing wrong with being sensitive. There's nothing wrong with being sensitive about a show you like or an opinion you have. It's bound to happen when you are biased, and you have a bias because everyone has a bias, or biases that they hold up. You're gonna get defensive because it feels personal to you, and especially people get attached to media, they get attached to characters, they get attached to dynamics, and they feel really strongly about that. It's like their personal identity, and there's nothing wrong with that. The issue is when you get mean about it. I definitely, there's a difference between being honest and or respectfully disagreeing, because you can respectfully disagree, you could bring points, you could do all this, but if you're just being mean and you're just trying to rage bait people, you aren't doing that because you're actually wanting to defend your opinion or your perspective. You're doing that to create harm. And I get it. I get it. I think this is just in general a crazy conversation, but it really pisses me off to see people be like, you're a fake fan, or you lack media literacy simply because you have a different opinion than them, or basically say there's something wrong with this side of the fandom, because of it just existing as the concept, or because some people take it too far, or saying that, you know, like, and also I think people need to understand it's like you can interact with stuff you dislike simply just to get another perspective on it. You know, I've read fanfics as ships that are very controversial, stuff that I thought, like, what the fuck? It was insane. I like, this is insane. Like, you shouldn't. Like, I don't get how they ship these characters. Or I think they're probably doing this to purposely aggravate people, or like, they write the craziest stuff. But then there are some where it's like, this ship is controversial. People who actually ship this are weird. I don't ship it, but I think the fanfic is good, because good writing is good writing. Or it's like, well, they explored the dynamic in an interesting way that I never thought of before, not necessarily always romantic, but in like a different context. And it's like, well, I can see that, and all that kind of stuff, and then be like, still morally wrong in my opinion. I still wouldn't ship it in my opinion, but you wrote it in an interesting way, or your writing was good. Your writing was good in the sense that you made the characters your own, basically, and that's kind of the point of fanfic. And that's stuff that I've done, even if I disagree with it. And I think people need to understand that you don't have to interact with stuff you disagree with. You don't, especially if you really don't want to see it, you don't have to interact with it. But I do think it is interesting to like go in and see like ships I disagree with, or ships that I think are immoral. Maybe read a fanfic or two and just get kind of a perspective of what these people are writing, what they are interpreting this ship as, what they're interpreting these characters' dynamic as. Because I'm interested, because I'm like, well, I never, like, I will see it and I'll be like, that's crazy. And then I'll read it and I'll be like, huh. So this is what you think of these characters. This is how you think of their dynamic. Now, some people will write it simply to be weird, but some people will write it because they are actually interested in exploring these characters' dynamics. And I can't hate them for that. I could think it's weird that they chose these characters, but I can't hate them. And honestly, if I'm like, this is too weird, I can't stick with this, like, even if the fanfic is somewhat good, it's too weird, then I just don't read anymore and I don't support it. Now, if it's a ship I don't support, but there's one fanfic that's really good, I'm gonna finish that fanfic if I like it. I'm gonna like that fanfic if I like it, even if I don't like the ship. There's nothing wrong with that. There really is nothing wrong with that. Because people have like taboo stuff that they read all the time. Like, obviously there's some stuff that I think are more immoral than others, but like, and there's some stuff that I read when I was younger that I may not agree with now. But I'm just saying, like, I do think it is important that when you are making a critique, or you're just trying to get an idea of like people that you just disagree with, to interact with what they're actually saying. Like, this applies to anything, but like, especially in fandom, if you're interacting with like I don't understand how someone came to this conclusion, I'm gonna listen to what they have to say first, and what they back up, and how they interpret it. And even if I'm like, this makes no sense, this sounds horrible, you're crazy, even if I may think that, I'm gonna listen to it, and then I'm gonna make my judgment after, and I'll be like, okay, I see what you're saying, I get how you're coming to that, I still don't agree, and then I just choose to not interact with it anymore. That's the thing, you can watch like a YouTube video, listen to someone's entire analysis, and be like, I don't know about that, man. I listened to it fully all the way through, but I don't know. and then you just not interact with that person ever again, or their content or their opinions ever again. You don't have to do that. And even then, there are going to be people who will say stuff that you agree with, and then you'll find out like the rest of their stuff, and you'll be like, I don't know anymore if I really agree with you. I agreed with you on this one thing, but I'm not going to agree with you on the rest of the crap that you're spewing. And that's also fine. That applies to anything in life, but I think especially in fandom, because there are going to be people who have the same opinion as you, and then they mean it in an entirely different way than you. And that's also important. You have to understand who you're agreeing with. Like, you know what I mean? You have to understand who you're agreeing with and why they're like, if you both dislike a ship, and then you figure out why that person dislikes a ship, and it's entirely different from why you dislike a ship, you may agree on one thing, but if you have entirely different reasonings why, and you have entirely different ideas why, entirely different intentions, then like, for example, like there are plenty of like non-shippers who are like, I really just see these characters as friends, I don't see them in a romantic way. That's completely fine. And then there will be people who'll be like, I feel the same. And then they'll be like, that's great, like, yay, we can agree on that. And if someone means it's because I hate gay people and I think they should burn alive, and someone will be like, I just don't think they go well together. And those are two entirely different intentions and belief systems that all kind of go into this idea of why they dislike these characters. They may like their dynamic, but they dislike these characters being shipped romantically. That's the thing. That's why I said, like, your personal perspective and everything goes into your interpretation of the media, and also of anything surrounding the media. Because like, if you look at a ship, you can agree with someone on a critiques of a ship as a non-shipper, but that person can have an entirely different intention behind why they're saying that, an entirely different belief system behind why they're saying that, that isn't what you are. You may agree with them, you may even think they're right, but they aren't saying that with the same intention that you are. You aren't saying that because I just don't think these characters go well together. There are some people who like, I think any sort of idea of a gay couple being in any sort of media is a sin, and anyone who supports that should burn alive. There are some people who believe that, and then they will say, I don't like this ship because of that, and not because you just don't think it makes sense in the story. Okay, like, that's the thing. And you have to understand that you can disagree on someone in how something should out, like the outcome of a storyline or a character dynamic, like, or a character arc. You can disagree with someone on what you both want the outcomes to be, but like realistically, y'all both have the same foundation of why you want it that way. Like, you both be like, this character, he's gone through a lot of grief, or she's she lost her entire family. She struggles a lot with trying to get closer relationships, and so and then she meets with all these new character builds, good relationships with them, and then someone will be like, I want a character arc where she loses all of them again, and she has to re-grieve, and that becomes like the reason she becomes like a villain, and then that leads to like a huge total chaos. And then some people will be like, well, I agree that like she grieves and that she lost a lot of family, and I like her dynamic with these new characters, but I think it should be where these new characters are put in a sense of danger, but she fights with them to, stop a villain instead. And like the thing is, y'all both agree, you both believe that she has a good dynamic with these new characters, you both agree that she grieves, you both like her character in general and what she represents and her mannerisms and all that, but you just have entirely different ideas of how this next character arc should go for her, or who, like, what, like, this backstory of hers should turn into. And that's the thing, I think we need to bring back that nuance in fandom, because it's not this group is crazy and this group is crazy, and it's just people who want to purposely misinterpret the media in a way to aggravate others are harming others. People who actively try to start arguments in spaces that are meant to be comforting are causing problems. People like that are the reason why fandoms collapse. It's not because people ship characters. It's not because people like power scaling. It's not because people want different things for the ending of a show or a manga. It's not any of that. It's people who don't want to admit when they can be rude and wrong. It's people who don't want to admit that they can agree with someone that they generally disagree with, and that they can disagree with someone that they generally agree with. Okay, you can disagree with someone that you generally agree with on most things, but just disagree on this one aspect, or agree with someone that you generally disagree with on this one aspect, or on these few aspects. Okay, and people don't want to admit that, and they don't want to recognize that, and then they take that into arguing, into bullying, and to mischaracterizing each other. And I think the people that actively make fandom spaces uncomfortable, even people like, for example, take out the subsects of fandom, people who actively harass and bully black cosplayers, they make fandom unsafe. People like male fans who purposely make it uncomfortable for women to exist in a fandom, harass female content creators, like, they make it an unsafe space. Straight fans who make it uncomfortable for queer and trans content creators to state opinions or to have interpretations through their lens make it an uncomfortable space. When you harass these people, when you bully people, you make it an uncomfortable space. And it's the same thing. People will do that in these subsects of fandom. There will be racism, there will be sexism, there'll be all that kind of stuff within these subsects of fandom, and then in the larger scheme of fandom, and then people will bully you for what subsect of fandom you're in. And so I think it needs to come down that if you don't like certain content from the other side of the fandom, then you don't have to interact with it. If you don't mind that content, but if it comes from certain people that you agree with, then that's okay. And I think it is totally normal to have disagreements and even arguments here and there, but I think part of it does need to be people who need to have evidence, back up their claims. People do that. They have that. Some people just aren't willing to listen. But I also think, like, we need to recognize when someone isn't critiquing what you're saying in a genuine way, you don't need to argue with them. You don't need to bring evidence, because they aren't critiquing what you're saying in a genuine way, or your perspective or your interpretation in a genuine way. But I think it's important that, like, if you're gonna ship a certain character, you'd be like, well, I ship them specifically because this dynamic and the symbolism and all that, and it's fine if you don't, but this is why I do. And people have to be respectful of that. Be like, well, it's fine if you think they're just best friends. It's fine if you think they're just best friends. But if someone stated exactly why they ship a character with another character romantically, then that's it. They said why. they defended their point, you move on. And you don't get to make assumptions about, well, you don't really do that because you're they stated why, you move on. Simple that. If someone's like, this character is stronger because of these reasons, are bringing up my evidence, you don't have anything to refute that, and you're just saying, well, actually you're wrong, that they gave their claim. If you aren't going to genuinely critique it in a way that is respectful to their opinion, then you can move on. You don't have to interact with it. If you find out a content creator has content that you disagree with, even though you agreed with them on this one opinion, you don't have to interact with them anymore. If you find content that you think is weird and gross, you don't have to interact with it. And then also, you don't have to shame people who choose to interact with it. It's better to ignore them. Like, genuinely, it is better to ignore them. Now, obviously, curiosity will kill the cat. And if you satiate your curiosity, you'll probably be more horrified. But rather, like, these people will already get flack, but I think it's better to ignore certain people who make those harmful comments, make harmful statements, does really controversial stuff, does stuff that is high-key criminal, writes stuff that is kind of weird. I think it is totally normal for you to just ignore them, and I think it's better to ignore those creeps, because it gives them less of a platform. When you're constantly talking about them, that gives them more chance. Like, they're gonna defend themselves, they're gonna talk about it more, they're probably gonna write more out of spite. I'm gonna say it. It's better to ignore them. It's better to ignore them. The people that enjoy it will enjoy it. The people that don't enjoy it don't have to read it. They don't have to read it, and they don't have to interact with it. They don't have to comment. They don't have to talk about those creators. They can just ignore them, and that's completely fine. I'm just saying, it is completely fine to do. It's better to ignore those people. But I just think we have to recognize who's truly making fandoms more difficult, and that is the people who just want to start stuff. It's not people who want to just enjoy the area they feel more comfortable in. It is the people who want to purposely try and start stuff. I definitely think the people who harass, like, the creators are crazy. It depends on the situation, but in general, harassing the creator is crazy. But I think there's a difference between rightful outrage and harassment. But I do, like, the thing is just because one group of people may have banded together and went and did that doesn't mean the entirety of that subsect of that fandom did that. Okay, it was probably just a couple people that specifically wanted this thing that went and did that. Okay, like, they probably all agreed, probably banded and did it together. And even then amongst them, they will all have different interpretations and opinions. So even then, they aren't fully united in their outrage. They aren't fully united. But I think we need to recognize is, like, you don't have to go into another space and purposely make it uncomfortable. You do that specifically because you want to. And those are the people that make fandoms dangerous. Is the people who, they already disagree, they already hate the people, they don't want to listen to any other opinion, they don't want to listen to any other interpretation, and they specifically want to cause a problem. And this is in general, I'm gonna say that this is in general. People will argue over anything, and the thing is also, you have to discern, should I interact with this person and try and defend my point, which is healthy, or do I ignore them and don't interact with them or their content out of protecting my peace and where I feel safe, and that is also healthy. And that is what makes a healthy fandom, is us recognizing that we're all equal in making our favorite media be popular and successful and thrive, and recognizing that we all have different interpretations and opinions, and some people are gonna have stuff that's crazy that we disagree with, some people are gonna say stuff that we agree with, and we should really just stay where we're comfortable. Like, if you don't feel comfortable in a certain space, you don't have to go there. And then also, we need to recognize when it how to properly call each other out, critique each other, how to properly, you know, argue, how to properly debate, that isn't purposely trying to create a place of harm. And I think it's important that we all recognize to call out people who are just trying to start stuff for no reason. Okay, like, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are non-shippers who are sick of people going into shipping content and, harassing shipping creators when they really, like, I don't want to hear about that. It's like, because it gives them a bad name just as much as it gives shippers a bad name when some shippers go do crazy stuff. And the same thing, plenty of power scalers don't do the whole thing where the man's obviously gonna always be stronger than a woman, even though the woman's a god and he just lifts 3 rocks in his anime. He lifts 3 rocks one time and got into this cool fight, but she's literally a god, but she's weaker than him. There are some power scalers who are like, I don't do that, but there are some that do. They do that crazy stuff. They say stuff like that and think that they're right, and then there will be other power scalers that will refute that. And at the end of the day, that's the thing. It's like, there will always be someone who will say stuff that is crazy, do stuff that is crazy, that everyone's like, I'm not the crazy one, they're the crazy one. But I think we just need to and they're like, oh, they give us a bad name. But it's like, at the end of the day, that's that one person's actions. That's that one group's actions. That is not the entirety of your subsect. That is not the entirety of the culture. And that is not the entirety of the fandom. And I think people need to recognize that. And I think it's healthy that we call that out rather than be like, well, da 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 da, and like generalize an entire group. No, call out that person for being rude and for starting stuff for no reason. Call that one person out for saying stuff that is objectively wrong or even harmful or stereotypical and has really no backing. Like, call that out. But don't make it a thing where, like, oh, obviously you said that because you're in this group. Like, no, it's like, call it out because you just want to be honest, or because you want to have an honest conversation. I know people will disagree with that. I know people, my points were kind of all over the place, but I think in general, it's like, the people that want to start stuff and the people that want to purposely rage bait and misconstrue and point fingers and call names don't want to actually do anything productive, and the people that actually want to debate, disagree, critique, all that kind of stuff, people who just want to exist comfortably and talk about their perspectives, their interpretations, and their interests, they cannot do that because of the people that want to start stuff. And it's important that all of us call out those people who just want to start stuff, because it impacts all of us. We're turning against each other when at the end of the day, we're all the same losers, watching the same stuff, reading the same stuff. We're just taking different stuff out of it. We're making different stuff because of it. At the end of the day, we all have our own niche that is nerdy and weird, and a lot of people, the thing is, we're gonna argue within our own fandom or talk about this and all of that, or like fandom in general, but like specifically our fandom, we're gonna argue and disagree and all that, but anything. But the thing is, from an outsider perspective, they're gonna think we're all crazy, no matter what part of the fandom you are, no matter how normal you are. And I think people need to recognize that. And I also think that if you're a casual viewer and you don't want to interact with any of like the tenets of the fandom, that's completely fine. You just want to interact with the canon, that's fine. Just want to watch the show, read the manga, that's it, that's fine. Or like the general media analysis, that's it. But if you see content from a specific subsect that has a different culture than just being a casual fan or just being a canon fan, your opinions are not going to be based off like the same standard of like what these people are seeking. Okay, like the character analysis you're gonna get, like general character analysis, media analysis of the media you're talking about is important, but the general character analysis in like power scaling or in shipping, though they have different standards of what they're looking from the media, what they're taking, what they're specifically absorbing. Obviously they understand the general story, but they will take certain things and they will focus on certain stuff that you aren't gonna be focusing on as like a general, like I'm just generally consuming the canon. So I think it's important that if you're gonna go into these spaces, you can't just be saying, well, this is what happened in the canon, this is what it was said in this translation, because when people go into like different analysis subsects, even in like fan art and stuff like that, when they go into like different analysis subsects, they are looking at different subtext and intention and implication within the story that isn't just what is objectively said in the canon that most casual viewers are going to just consume. So, as a casual viewer, I say beware if you're gonna go into a shipping space or go into any other space or fan art space and all that, be wary of what you are, because there's nothing wrong with just consuming the canon, but it's like you are coming in not understanding the culture of that subsect of fandom, and you're gonna be shocked and you're gonna be like, well, they said this, or you're gonna take a lot of things objectively. I'm not gonna say every casual viewer, but a lot of casual viewers are going to take what is going on in the story visually, like objectively, and even then if they like the general media analysis, people who just generally analyze the media and come up with like theories just for like the plot, they're taking it at a full view and they're not actually like fully deep diving into, like these branches of stuff. Like, I'm not gonna say that for every casual viewer, but I'm gonna say that like even that isn't being casual. If you're fully like diving in, doing theories, stuff like that, I wouldn't really say that's. I think casual viewers can be interested in theories, but if you're like gonna go fully into like a theorist analysis kind of person, then I feel like you aren't much of a casual fan anymore. But I feel like if your main thing is you're only focusing on the plot, I'm gonna say that if you're interested in character dynamics and like, oh, that's really interesting, oh, I didn't know that, da da da. But if you're mostly focused on the plot, there's nothing wrong with that. You aren't going to have the same perspective or understand the reasonings and the things that people in these subspecs like that focus on character analysis are going to say. Whether it's shipping, power scaling, they are focusing on something entirely different. Like, they do focus on the plot, but they are focusing more on the characters, and you may find a character interesting, but if you aren't like fully invested in that character and you're more invested in the plot, you have to be careful with what you're critiquing or what you're saying, because these people have probably been studying these characters for a long time. And I'm just saying that as a casual fan, if because I've been a casual fan of some stuff, so I make it a point that like if I don't know enough, or if I've not deeply looked at these characters or even read through like any theories, prime theories, anything, like if I'm not actively reading through and seeing what these people are saying when I'm interacting with those fandoms or subsects of fandom, if I'm not actively doing that, then I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna say anything while I disagree. I think this or that. I'm not gonna, or like this happened, and I'm not gonna say anything. I'm gonna sit and listen like a good kid, because they know more than me. They know a lot more than me. They've studied this a lot more than me. So I'm focused on the plot. They're focused on everything else. And they know it well, and I'm not gonna say anything. If you just want to watch a show and you don't want to be involved in anything else, all that's fine. But if you get curious, be respectful and listen first before you say anything. Because don't think that just because you're more focused on the plot, like the general plot, that you know more. Even if you are like analyzing a bit, don't think that you necessarily know more than the people who are in like really studying this media. I'm just saying that. Just don't, like, if they really know a character well, don't come in and be like, well, what about the, trust me, like, they know everything well. Whatever you're gonna say, they're probably gonna be like, I refuted that claim 3 years ago in this post. You better go read it. And you better go read it. I'm gonna say that. You better go read it, because they already said it. They already said it, and they already refuted it. You have to just go read it. I'm gonna say that. If you're a casual fan and you're gonna try, and there's nothing wrong with speaking your mind, but listen first from the people who have been there. Listen to your forefathers before you make a claim. I will say that. Listen to your forefathers before you make a claim. If you're a casual fan, listen to your forefathers. If you just got into the fandom and just got into that subsect of fandom, you just got into it, you barely know the culture of it, listen to your forefathers, then make an opinion. Just listen in general and then make an opinion, then make a critique. That's all I really have to say. I talked way too long. I probably said subsect like 30,000 times, but I hope people somewhat agree with me, because I don't think my opinion is that crazy. I think it's actually really normal, but I know some people are gonna misinterpret it. So, but yeah, it's just like, just leave people alone. Mind your own business. Thank you very much.